And we're back. We're back. Recognize these two faces?
From last year.
So welcome back, everybody. We hope you enjoyed that break. Johnny did say his goodbyes, but we just want to give him a big ups because he literally agreed to do this gig like last minute.
Yeah, literally yesterday, because Mpumi, and a big shout out to Mpumi, who's also on our board of AAVEA, she couldn't fly down from Joburg, so we asked Johnny, and with no prep, did an amazing job. Thanks so much, Johnny.
He's an absolute natural, and it was cool. Hosting with him. But you have me and Sabina for the rest of the session, and what a session, because we have two people who are not, they're no strangers to AAVEA, who will be presenting some incredible insights. But before we get into that, I have some delicious news. Those of you that have been in the game, I know how competitive you guys are.
We've been far.
Those of you
I can't believe it.
that have been waiting with bated breath to find out the winners of the big game, I have the results.
Wow.
I have the results. So we actually had a tie in the end and had to then pull a name. We had to do we had a tie with two names. So we pulled the name of the grand prize winner. And I am delighted to announce that the grand prize winner for a 2-night stay at Inverdoren Game Reserve is Craig Girdlestone from Waterfront Charters. So congratulations, Craig.
Colleague of yours.
And we're not done yet, because the runner-up is Lila Jutzen of Hood Constantia. And Lila, you have an incredible experience ahead of you. It's shark cage diving with marine dynamics. But worry not if you were one of the people playing and you were in the top 10. The balance of the winners, the 8 other winners, we will reach out to you to give you your prizes, which are some of the runner-up prizes, but they're just as amazing and incredible. So thank you everyone for participating in the big game, and congratulations to Craig and Lila.
And as it happens, Lila's a colleague of mine at Hood Constantia. We had nothing to do with drawing the names, by the way. So.
There was no rigging. Cool. So this is a good time to intro our next speaker.
Yes, and we have an old friend, a young person, but an old friend of AAVEA. Hi, Jakob. So nice to see you. How are you?
I'm very good. Hello, you two. I'm a bit bummed that I didn't win, but congratulations to those two winners. It sounds like a fantastic prize.
And welcome back. You know, when I see your face, I get a happy feeling, because the last time I saw you in person was the last time life was normal. It was on the 29th of January last year, 2020. We just hosted, AAVEA had hosted the first global summit of IAPA ever in South Africa. If I think about it now, there's this sort of glow of light that surrounds it. The weather was amazing. The wine was good. Everybody connected. I think everybody fell in love with South Africa, and then the world closed down.
It actually feels like ages ago, but it's a memory which we'll keep for a long time, especially now that the past 18 months have been so difficult. But that was, that was a good closing to the normal world before it all went crazy.
I'm going to remember that, the parenthesis to the normal world. Jakob, thank you for joining us today. And Jakob's going to be sharing with us some of the things that have been happening in Europe. You know, I'm very lucky in that I sit on one of your subcommittees. And so I'm connecting with our colleagues in Europe, the attractions in Europe. And it's been very interesting to me sometimes they're behind us in the sense that they're closed and we're open. Sometimes they're ahead of us. They've just opened for their summer, so we can learn from them. Ultimately, whenever I speak to my colleagues in Europe, I get this feeling of we're not alone, because we sometimes feel like we are right so far away at the tip of Africa, and the problems are remarkably similar. So I'm really looking forward to what you've got to say, and thank you for being a virtual sponsor, and thank you for remaining a friend and helping us through these tough times.
Thank you very much for having me. And it is actually what Ella said before. You know, we are all in this together, and I think this is probably a positive outcome. I looked it up approximately 12 months ago. I think one day, 364 days ago, I had a presentation actually at the last conference, which was great. And we talked a little bit about the trends. And this today is supposed to be an update. So I look forward to show you a little bit our perspective of what's going on here in Europe. I think the first thing what we have noticed is the difference between regional and tourist destinations, because I think you probably know the best. People are currently not feeling comfortable in crossing borders. And we're not talking about only long distance travel, but we also talk about regional travel. So what we see in Europe is that the regional parks, the more regional your audience is, the better you went through this crisis. I've personally seen, several parks in the past weeks. And it was interesting. You see on the left picture a park in Poland, which had days with up to 50,000 guests. While at the same time, Disneyland Paris is suffering more because they live from that international audience, which obviously makes it difficult right now. So how do the parks react actually at that stage? It is mostly that they try to keep in the people. And this is where we have seen in the pandemic being an accelerator for certain trends. And one of them is definitely accommodation. We see more and more regional parks actually either adding accommodation, and then also I don't know of any park which already has accommodation not thinking about expanding it, because we see there's a demand to stay within your region, to really kind of enhance the experience. And we have two wonderful examples here. On the left-hand side, it's Tripstal. It's a small, mid-sized amusement park in Germany, which is just actually expanding the tree houses. And on the right-hand side, you see a park in France, Le Pal, which is a combined zoo and amusement park. And they also had lots of cabins. And despite the crisis, they have built a huge new hotel, the biggest investment they had in history. But you see that this actually right now works for those regional parks in this concept. Interestingly enough, we see, however, also others stepping up the game. And this is where we see a grow in competition, because people want to be entertained, people want to be, attracted to fun stuff. And you see that actually many tourist players jump into this game. Here are some examples from the Alps in Austria and Switzerland, where you see they have noticed people don't travel anymore that far. We need to give them experiences. And this is not only about, just mountains or hiking or stuff like this. We need to add more. We need to add slides. We need to add special gondolas. And obviously we have the Table Mountain here, part of this event, and they know best, but people really, really appreciate that. And this is where we have seen a growth in competition. At the same time, for the moment, the pandemic has shown we also lost competition, because not everyone right now is actually still able to host people in the way they used to. And while until 2 years ago, before the pandemic, probably one of the biggest, I wouldn't say copycats, but people who really kind of tried to learn from amusement parks were cruise ships. You see some examples here of those traveling amusement parks on boats. And it's interesting to see that their fate right now is pretty unknown. Will people actually feel comfortable again to be with 6,000 people on the boat? That is to be seen, but it shows that we have a strong growth and a loss in different segments of the market. And I think that is something which we need to observe in the future as well. But how did guests actually react in those days? What we have seen everywhere, and everywhere I go, is people are spending more. They have had some savings. They now can get out, and they really want to have the best day ever. So they are upgrading. You see beautiful suites. There's a bigger demand for expensive hotel rooms. You see them shopping more. Everywhere I go, people really say, listen, I want to make this the best day ever, especially after those 17 difficult months. And people are willing to spend the money. And I think that is very interesting. And also you see that people actually are better distributed throughout the season because of the fact that everything is now online ticketing. You have less peaks, you have less peak days, but you have a more stable base of visitors coming every year. An interesting case study here you see on the right as well is Disneyland Paris. They used to have a free fast pass where you can kind of skip the line, and they gave you time saying you can come back in 2 hours and then ride this ride without waiting. During the pandemic, all of a sudden they stopped that program. It is not for free anymore. They charge now per ride. It shows there's money in the market and people are willing to spend that. On the back end, a lot of technology helped on that. And I think also Ella elaborated on that. You see technology really came into the game. You have everywhere mobile food ordering. And something which is very, very interesting here, you see in the middle. It's a park in the United States called Kings Island, part of the Cedar Fair Group. They have approximately 2 million guests a year. What did they do this year? They announced to go completely cashless. And I think that is something which you will see more in the future, because right now is the moment to change. You also see many parks actually introducing virtual queue apps. That technology actually helps to distribute people better. Another example right now is Disney World in Orlando. They announced a new app which works with artificial intelligence, which sees how is the park actually busy, and it guides you towards those corners where it's supposed to be less busy. One key item actually, which has also seen a huge change, I would say, over the past years, is retail. You see, retail is coming towards us because retail needs to attract the audience, which is not coming anymore because of online commerce. So this is where you see shopping centers adding actually attractions to bring in more people, to be more entertaining. But it's interesting because we see our industry actually doing the opposite. And I put in a picture of IKEA, because IKEA is actually the world champion, I would say, in the idea, the entrance is free, but you pay at the exit. And this is what we have seen now with two other wonderful examples where retail is just an experience. Karls in Germany is one example which came out of a strawberry farm. It attracted so many people in a certain way, like the wineries which you have in South Africa, that people stayed for coffee, they added attractions, and now they have actually 5 locations, adding 2 more right now, with some of them actually having more than 1 million guests. And you see how retail actually can become an experience and drive guests, especially also in this difficult time, because they want to have more than that. I do not want to elaborate on the next trend too much, because you hopefully all heard what Steffi said this morning. Dynamic pricing is big, and dynamic pricing is everywhere. We have seen it, with car rentals, with airlines, and we see, and I think you have heard that as well for the past years, that it is entering the amusement industry. What we see is changing right now is that parks become braver. We see that they become more brave in asking higher prices and actually charging more. I want to give you 2 examples. Europa Park, always in Germany, the second largest park in Europe, always had a fixed price for all season long. This year, they said, well, we got to change something because we lost a lot of our revenue. The quality of the product is great. So they actually introduced a high season fee where they increased the price by 10%. Think about it, how much income that is. And the people were okay with that, because you see that there's a new expectation of people, and we will actually come back to that a little bit later. Another example, what we have also seen is annual passports. Annual passports in Europe used to be very cheap. You wanted to lure in the people, that they come more often, that they spend more often, but it was actually cheap. And you see many parks rethinking this. So what we see is not only like an increase in prices, and here you have examples from the US parks in America, but what you also see is, to what I said before, to try to balance the visitor flow better over the year. So many parks have introduced block out dates for the season passes, where you then can actually add a premium pass or something where you can visit all year long. But maybe that is also something which we will see more in the future, that you say, listen, season pass, there's a basic model, which is valid 365 days a year or during the whole season. But if you want to come on those peak days, you have to pay extra or you have to reserve. Those are all actually great things which we notice, but there are also certain challenges. And the biggest challenge in the attractions industry in Europe, in the United States, and in many other regions is human resources. You do not find the staff anymore. And I have put out some examples here of newspapers where you see US American parks actually shortening their season, shortening their opening hours because they do not find staff anymore. I just talked actually to 2 parks in Europe where the CEO or the general manager worked in the burger kitchen of a burger restaurant, or actually serving drinks, because they said they don't find people anymore. And that is a huge problem, which is, I would say, one of the biggest risks of our industry today. So what was the response of those American parks? And that is something which is very, very important as well, I think, as a warning for our industry. It was actually money. You see that certain parks, Cedar Point, one of the roller coaster capitals of the world, doubled their base salary from $10 to $20 per hour. You see that Universal actually raised it from $13 to $15 an hour, which is not that much, but then again, they have 18,000 team members. Think about the effective cost of labor shortage on what happens. But it's a more general problem, I think, and that is something which we need to think about, because the whole hospitality industry is in that massive challenge. So what do we need to do about it? I think the biggest thing is you need to understand today's world. And there are several influence factors on HR. You can't do the blame game. You can't say, listen, the young people don't want to work anymore, because it is not helpful and it doesn't change. It is rather the question, how do we want to work and what can we change? And this is where it is very interesting that I think more than ever, the purpose of work has become important. Young people or seasonal people as well, they want to have flat hierarchies, they want to have a purpose of work, and they want to have a participation in decision processes. I'm not sure if you're aware of what we call purpose-driven companies. I give you the examples of Patagonia or the sneaker brand AAVEA or the shoe brand Tom's. They have actually, they're purpose-driven, so they say a huge portion of their revenues go to charities. And this is interesting because not only they have a massive growth actually in the turnover, they have a complete run on applications, because young people want to work for something which makes sense to them, which is purpose-driven, where they understand what they're doing. And I think that is actually something which is very, very important, because values are more important than other things that they have been in the past. You see behavioral change also in guests. And there are two things which I think also we need to be alert of. With the pandemic and with people having been at home for a while, expectations change. People are not willing anymore to have a bad experience. They have had a tough time and they want to come back to use attractions for their mental well-being, to really get the day out, to have fun, and to not wait in line for 60 minutes or, why is my drink not here yet? They have higher expectations. And then actually that comes together with another challenge, which is more or less across the same line. People have a thinner skin. Unfortunately, it is like it is, but people really kind of are struggling more and more. And we hear that from parks everywhere across Europe. They're more aggressive. They don't have the patience. You also have, people wanting to wear masks, other people, don't believing in it. And you see that this is difficult. And this is actually an example which I took today at the Pleasure Beach here in Blackpool in the United Kingdom. It's signs which are across the park. And you can imagine that they're not there without a reason. So I think this is something where we need to be very careful in trying to protect the idea of an attraction from the outside world and really come back to that factor that people have a great day, they feel comfortable, and they really kind of want to stay. And then there's another big challenge up the road. And I think we know that in Europe, and it is something which we should never forget and which will accompany us for the years to come. It's sustainability. It is that the sensitivity of guests have increased. They are wondering, what are you doing? What is going on? How do you produce those things? I see more and more parks actually talking about it, claiming it. This is what we're doing to really kind of, gain the confidence of the guests. One big subject in that is actually food and beverage. We have never seen actually a more sensitive audience in terms of food. I'll give you an example. In Germany, 1/3 of the population is considered to be nutrition sensitive. Think about it, 1/3. You have more food allergies. So we actually expect food safety will be the next big thing in this industry. And this is where our guests, and I come back to what we discussed just about values, about expectations. They want to have more transparency. They want to have less food additives. They want to have less packaging. This is really something I think what we will see more and more. Then coming back to what we see actually in terms of human resources, it's also from the audience. What is the corporate social responsibility? We have some wonderful examples of parks, and I give you one in Germany called Miniature Wonderland. They actually introduced 2 free weeks where people who can't afford the entrance fee can go in for free. The first thing was, how can you afford that? 2 weeks without charging an entrance fee to so many people. But they said, in terms of brand building, in terms of image, this was so helpful that we actually benefited from that. And I think that is a wonderful example. And then there's the question of effect of climate change. What does it do in parts of the world? We have all seen the terrible pictures, the terrible images from regions all across the world. Here in Europe, the Mediterranean Sea, many countries, Turkey, Greece, Algeria, we had a lot of forest fires. What does it mean to guests in other European countries about the attractivity of those regions. Does it mean maybe, I do not feel comfortable going there anymore. I don't know what happens. I don't know what the pandemic brings. I don't want to be stuck there. Maybe this will actually be another accelerator for those regional attractions, for people saying, I stay in my comfort zone. I stay where I am. This actually leads me to my last question, or to my last slide, which has several questions. And the big question is, what is the business model for my attraction looking like post-crisis? And we don't have answers to that. I wish I would. But there are several questions which we all need to ask ourselves. Is it quality over quantity? We have seen last year where the numbers were reduced, that actually the customer satisfaction was much higher. This industry was always quantity driven. Now with the reduction of quantities and all of a sudden a growth in customer satisfaction, what is the effect of that? Do we maybe need to change the business model, become more exclusive and have a better experience? Or do we go back to where we have been? We don't know. Another interesting fact is, in some areas in Europe, you had a health pass. So that means you had to show that you're vaccinated or tested to get access to parks. At a certain moment, when the numbers went down, you didn't need to do that anymore. But we know several attractions which actually kept that. Without the restriction that they needed to ask for vaccination or for tests, they said, I will keep this running because it gives confidence to my guests, gives confidence to the mothers who are often kind of deciding what to do, that they say, listen, everyone is safe here. So what does it mean? How does safety in the future, in terms of something like a pandemic, play a role in the industry? The next question is also very interesting. Reservations. This industry never worked a lot with reservations, when we're very honest. People came to the entrance, paid their price, and were okay. Nowadays, with mandatory reservations, you always know how many people will show up. And the best thing is, probably less in South Africa, but what we see in Europe, even if it rains, they're coming. So you have a stable base of people. You can calculate your operations better. You can better actually, calculate your revenue. And this is actually very helpful for many people. So I assume, even if it's not mandatory anymore, this is something really to stay. Many parks have lost parts of the season. We have seen that they had to open later, or they had to close down again, reopen. So we see actually many attractions across the region trying to extend the season. They want to stay open longer. They might actually, in the classic winter months where they were closed, try to offer new things to really try to have a better flexibility, to also hire the staff for longer and not only have seasonal staff, but to really try to cater throughout the year. And then the probably biggest question, which I assume you're asking yourself as well, what will actually happen when international tourism recovers? Let's say in England, the English people were not allowed to travel in the same way that they have been in the past. Once they are allowed again, without huge restrictions to travel, will they jump a plane again and go to Spain or to South Africa or Turkey? Or will they say, listen, it wasn't too bad after all here in our country. We continue our staycation and we are happy guests here for the future as well. Those are the questions which I don't have an answer to, but which will probably accompany us for the next year, together with what I tried to summarize beforehand. I hope this gave you a little perspective on how we see the industry right now here in Europe, what we see actually in the future, and not only in Europe, but also on other continents. And once again, thank you very much for having me. It is great to see you again, and you do wonderful work down there in South Africa, and we are very proud as IAAPA to have you as a partner. And we very much look forward to hopefully see you soon again, either in South Africa or at one of our IAAPA events. But thank you very much for having me. I hope this was insightful, and have a great presentation. I'm very happy to see Bernard coming after me, who is doing fantastic work here in England. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, Jakob, you've blown my mind. It was a combination of confirming and summarizing a lot of the learnings that we've had through the day and throwing on some new problems this late in the day, things we haven't thought
Things
about.
we haven't considered.
Absolutely fascinating. I think before you start thinking, oh, that doesn't apply here in South Africa, when those tourists come back to South Africa, they have expectations of what they saw happening in Europe. So cashless, apps, mobile health apps, etc., even if we don't have them.
That's right.
That's going to be an interesting conundrum. I haven't thought about that. And on my darkest days, when perhaps I'm a little bit depressed about the attractions industry, I will be thinking about the cruise industry. Because you're right, I feel sorry for those guys. That'll be interesting.
That's a hard one, and you know, we have some members in this industry, and I feel very sorry for them. But the question is, you know, what does their business model look like in the future? Will people feel comfortable with that thought again? And it's a difficult situation. But hey, you know, and we have said that before. We are all in this together. And you heard me kind of, and you said it as well, Sabine. Some of the stuff was overlapping with other presentations, but I think that is, you know, where we need to reassure ourselves, hey, listen, you are facing the same issues like someone else.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. Right. Okay.
We're moving on to a poll right before our next speaker. So we're going to say goodbye to Jakob and jump straight into our poll. So the question this time around is, you're no longer at home, right? So why are attractions the new social spaces? Interesting question. So your options are, I don't plan to leave home ever. Yebo, I'm here for this.
Bernard was a favorite speaker of mine last year.
Yes, Bernard was a favorite speaker of mine last year. Oh, this will be a goodie. Everyone has missed socializing. Never mind social spaces. How will we actually prize people out of the home? So you have 30 seconds to make your pick. And once we've done that...
And while we wait, let me tell Jakob, if he's still online, I'm absolutely desperate to get to the AAVEA exhibition and conference in Spain in September, because that's where we pick up all the latest trends.
Yep.
Currently, Spain won't let us in, so hold thumbs, guys. Currently, it's not happening, but, you know, things change very quickly.
Right. So I think we have the poll results up, and okay, an overwhelming majority, 93.8%, say, ooh, this will be a goodie. Everyone has missed socializing. So on that note, let's socialize with Bernard.
Absolutely.